war, viewers, and I want to turn our attention to that now. Viewers, in part 2, we are focusing on the fact that West Asia may be teetering on the precipice of an all-out war between Israel and Iran. In the early hours of today, viewers, Israel has drawn a new line in the sands of deterrence. Israel has launched Operation Rising Lion to defang Iran, which it accuses of not just exporting terror but also amassing nuclear fuel to produce weapons for the express purpose of carrying out a genocidal nuclear attack against Jews in Israel. Listen to Netanyahu.
Moments ago, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat. For decades, the tyrants of Tehran have brazenly, openly called for Israel's destruction. They've backed up their genocidal rhetoric with a program to develop nuclear weapons. In recent years, Iran has produced enough highly enriched uranium for 9 atom bombs. 9. In recent months, Iran has taken steps that it has never taken before, steps to weaponize this enriched uranium. And if not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months, less than a year. This is a clear and present danger to Israel's very survival.
More than 200 Israeli jets were involved in air raids on at least 100 targets subsequently in Iran in 5 waves of strikes, including at the key Natanz nuclear site, as well as at ballistic missile sites to degrade Iran's ability to hit back. About a dozen different sites appear to have been attacked, and on the map, viewers, you can see some of them, including in Tehran, Tabriz, Isfahan, Kermanshah. These are some of the sites, viewers. So you have the Tehran Research Reactor, Tabriz, Kermanshah. You have the Arak Heavy Water Reactor and Isfahan Nuclear Technology Center and Natanz Enrichment Facility there. Israel also has reportedly killed at least 6 senior Iranian nuclear scientists and a number of senior Iranian officials, including its most senior military officer and the head of the Revolutionary Guards. There are a number of these people who have been eliminated, wiped out. Mohammad Bagheri, as I told you, Iran's Armed Forces Chief of Staff, Major General Hossein Islami, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Commander, Major General Rashid, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Official, Muhammad Mahdi, Tehranchi, nuclear scientist, Faridun Abbasi, another nuclear scientist. So pretty much anyone who is consequential to this nuclear program and to, of course, the military capacities of Iran have been eliminated. US President Trump struck a triumphant note and warned Iran that there was more to follow if the country didn't come to the table and give up its nuclear weapons program. Iran has announced that it will no longer participate in a dialogue on this issue with the United States. It's pulled out, in fact, but this is what Trump said. Listen in.
There's a chance of massive conflict. We have a lot of American people in this area, and I said, we got to tell them to get out because something could happen soon. And I don't want to be the one that didn't give any warning and missiles are flying into their buildings. It's possible. So I had to do it. I had the choice. Do I do it or not? Doing it has its downside, but it also has its upside. Like, you're going to save a lot of lives if it should happen. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Well, I'd love to avoid the conflict. Iran's going to have to negotiate a little bit tougher, meaning they're going to have to give us some things that they're not willing to give us right now. I'm the last person. I've kept us out of wars.
Well, viewers, Iran has pulled out. It's not going to negotiate. It's pulled out of negotiations. Iran has also vowed catastrophic revenge upon Iran and also threatened other regional players who it is said has abetted in Israel's designs, which has led to both Israel and the United States not only pulling out its diplomats in various embassies which it thinks is vulnerable to Iranian strikes or counter strikes around the globe, but also, viewers, it has asked for enhanced security in countries where it thinks that some of its assets, diplomatic assets, are under threat. Now, what does all this mean, viewers? Let's put this into perspective, and we have with us some very insightful guests this evening. Let's go straight across to some of them and get a sense of what to make of these developments. I want to first begin with Uzi Arad, former National Security Advisor to Prime Minister Netanyahu from 97 to 99, and the head of the INSC. We also have former Director for Intelligence, Mossad, and Glenn Carl, former CI officer. So Mr. Uzi Arad has held a large number of portfolios, and he will be able to give us a bit of a sense of what Israel has contemplated, it is wanting to achieve, and why it did what it did. So can you explain, Mr. Arad?
Well, you have said it yourself when you listed the steps taken. Iran is in a singular position in which it is a country which explicitly and most authoritatively, through its leaders, declares its ambition to destroy Israel. It's not common that nations threaten others with complete extinction. Iran has been doing that, declaring that, but in addition to that, has been also activating that and has taken action towards that goal. It had already been, for example, privy to the recent attacks on Israel by the Hamas and some of those Islamic extremist organizations which attacked Israel viciously, and Iran was behind those attacks. When that happened, let me remind you, Iran at one point even attacked directly Israel by firing hundreds of ballistic missiles at Israel directly. It is involved in that. But what brought this thing to a halt, to a head, is the fact that Iran has been advancing its nuclear weapons program to the point that it was nearing, in fact, acquiring such weapons. Now, Israel declared throughout that this would constitute an existential threat to its own security, that it could not tolerate the possibility of a country that wants to destroy it to have the means to destroy it, and following warnings again and again, it had to act preemptively.
But Mr.
So
Arad,
this is
there was
preemptive strike.
Let me just play devil's advocate. I support Israel's right to self-defense. Let's be very clear. But just to get the other side in, metaphorically speaking, I want to ask you, because there was diplomatic engagement going on between the United States and the Iranians. Should we not have let that play out? Perhaps Iran would have seen sense in what the terms that were being offered and might have pulled back instead of resorting to violence, which could lead to more violence and an escalation which will completely destabilize an already destabilized region.
Well, you know, in effect, there were two such dialogues with Iran conducted by international bodies. In the first place, you have the international agency, the IEA, and only recently you have the head of that body placing a very serious accusation at Iran at having proceeded in a clandestine way to enrich more and more, and doing so without complying with certain things that it committed itself to do. This was a serious warning coming from the IEA, and it took place only a few days ago. At the same time, there was this engagement with Americans in Iranians directly. Now, the question was whether the Iranians were really intent on coming to a compromise that would seriously constrain it from producing weapons, as it said it will not produce. But it came to be realized, including by the US, that the Iranians were acting, in fact, were lying and deceiving. and there were steps that they were possibly considering breaking out. That has been made clear by the President of the United States. So had those negotiations led to actually abandoning its nuclear program, then they would have succeeded, and they were to be the course to prefer. But that is not the case. The case, as we've seen repeatedly, Iran has defiantly and aggressively.
So you're basically saying that critical mass had been achieved by the Iranians. They were about to go fully nuclear. They would have been the second country to have the Islamic bomb, and they have a nihilistic outlook. Okay, that's the
second. What do you mean the second?
Well, Pakistan.
Country
Pakistan is the first one,
exactly.
right? So this should be the second. Okay, let's open this up, because Abhijit Iyer Mitra also here with us. He's a senior fellow at the IPCS, an analyst, and he's been tweeting quite a bit today. How has Israel affected so much damage? Let's keep those pictures, and I want our viewers to see those precision strikes. Abhijit Iyer Mitra, this is something that is unprecedented, and apparently all sorts of feints were undertaken to do this. Can you break this down for us?
So, Rahul, the main thing is Israel invests in human beings. This is a human intel-driven and intel-driven operation, which is what Israel always does. They focus completely on people gathering the intel, which is why even the taking out of the IRGC Air Force leadership, they had such in-depth profiles on them. They actually managed to corral them into a command bunker, kept them there, and then hit them. Right. So they're very good at this kind of thing. The F-35s and, F-16s and F-15s, these are just the tip of the iceberg. The real bulk of the iceberg is the kind of effort that Israel puts into gathering intelligence, which is why these strikes are very successful. The second thing is, Israeli operational culture is to keep challenging your commanders and things like that. In India, we won't even dream of the kind of almost casualness in which a junior officer will contradict his senior officer and things like that, which is why they're able to evolve. Now, if you remember in the 2024 ballistic missile strike that Iran carried out on Israel, Israel came to the conclusion, look, you can't do terminal phase intercept, so let's get them even before they are launched. So what you're seeing right now is Iran is completely unable to even launch ballistic missiles, because the moment they're coming out of their storage areas or their hiding areas or whatever, there are apparently this is what the reports are saying, and we've seen videos to this effect, that they are bringing out shorter range drones and things like that, and blowing up these missiles even before they get airborne. So it is even a pre-boost phase intercept in that sense. That said, let's look at, as impressive as these Israeli achievements are, we need to remember that, there is an Indian interest in what Israel is doing up to a point, but not beyond that point. India's interest is that Iran should never become nuclear. The problem is, if it goes into regime change, it becomes counterproductive for us. It may be very good for Iran, but I want you to remember the Shah was very hostile to India. That was not a good regime for India. They armed and aided Pakistan in several wars against India. So, a contained Iran still under the Ayatollahs is probably, let's put it this way. We have an interest in the Shia-Sunni schism continuing, as long as we needed to.
Okay. Well, that's a slightly tangential view, and I'm not bringing India into this just as of now, but I want to bring in Glenn Carl, former CIA officer. Glenn Carl, I have to ask you this question. Can the West get to exercise a veto on who gets to go nuclear, point one? And point two, I find it fascinating. Trump supports Israel's right to avenge alleged Iranian terror export, but doesn't apply the same principle to India. Why? I'm interested in the second question, actually.
Well, let's start with the second first, but I'd like to say it's a pleasure to be on the air with Uzi, whom I've not seen for a number of years, and would be happy to see again. I don't know that it's a double standard, actually. The issue for India and Pakistan from the U.S. perspective is that you have two nuclear powers, one of which is already a global superpower, really, or on the cusp of being one, and the other of which is a nearly dysfunctional state. So the consequences of an escalation between Pakistan and India are global and almost existential. That's not the case for Israel and Iran. The issue is existential for Israel, which is certainly a significant point to weigh, but it's not a global existential threat. So I don't think it's a double standard. I think that
Aren't you making too
equations
fine a point,
different.
Glenn Carl? Because let's be honest, you talk about the India-Pakistan contest in apocalyptical terms. So does Trump when it comes to Iran acquiring nuclear weapons. You said that Pakistan is a failing state or a failed state or an whatever state. Surely it's in Trump's interest to negotiate to get those nuclear weapons out of Pakistan.
Well, that train has left the station long ago. The train is just about being built, or its steam has built up to the point where it can leave the station with Iran. So they really are not, I think, double standards. The issues are different. The equation for Iran is simple but excruciating. Israel has phenomenally, if not destroyed, incapacitated for a period of time, the surrogates that Iran has built up over the decades and has used to project its power. So that all that has left for Iran is a largely ineffective conventional military to use against Israel, or the option of going nuclear, the theory being that is the inoculation against regime change. That might not be the case, actually. And Iran has a simpler option, which would be not to develop nuclear weapons. But that seems to be tied in, from the Iranian perspective, with regime survival. Okay. So they put themselves into a terrible box.
Terrible box. Mr. Chileni, let me come to you, because it appears, and look, there are similarities, and we're going to keep those punishing pictures of those strikes on air because they are more interesting than seeing the Ayatollah. That much I can tell you. But Mr. Chileni, I have to ask you this question because it's an important one. We've seen certain strikes undertaken by India just about a month back, a little over a month ago. Israel seems to have, I won't say borrowed, but been inspired from India's deterrence manual, if you like. Obviously, they've gone further because they're not up against a nuclear state, but there are striking parallels here, aren't there?
Striking parallels, but also contrasting approaches. India gave Pakistan 15 days notice that was going to strike targets within Pakistan. Israel's attacks on Iran caught Iran by surprise. More importantly, Iran followed the first principle of air warfare, which is that before you try to assassinate any individual, the leadership, whether it's of the military or other specialized agencies, or you carry out deep penetration strikes, your first approach, your opening salvos, should focus on taking out the enemy's air defenses and ballistic missile launchers. That's the reason why, in response, Iran has not been able to fire ballistic missiles at Israel because its launchers were targeted in the first airstrikes by Israel. So Israel followed what air warfare strategy demands. That's the very first principle. And that very principle India ignored, because India's political leadership gave direction to the armed forces to strike only terrorist camps in Pakistan. Only when that initial objective led to the loss of some Indian warplanes did the Indian political leadership authorize the Air Force to take out Pakistani air defenses and hit air bases. So, in fact, Israel is following the classical air warfare strategy, and I wish India had actually done the same. But to the larger question of Iran becoming a nuclear weapon state, first, US intelligence, according to what's appearing in American media, US intelligence does not believe that Iran was close to acquiring nuclear weapons capability. But then there is the Gaddafi example, which is the reason why Iran has hesitated to do what President Trump is demanding, give up its uranium enrichment program in full. Gaddafi gave up his nuclear weapons option, and we know what happened to him. He was murdered. There was a NATO intervention that resulted in regime change, and that serves as a sobering lesson to the Iranian leadership. So while it is true that for regional security, no nation, whether it's India or Israel, wants another nuclear weapon state to emerge, the fact is that the Gaddafi example set a bad precedent, and Iran is determined, at whatever the cost be, determined to hold on to its uranium enrichment
So
option.
therefore, we are now looking at the frightful prospect of an escalation, because Iran certainly is not going to take a step back. It's been battled and bruised too badly. It's lost face. It doesn't have much to hide by the way of face, and it's going to dig its heels in. Viewers, this is going to be a bit of a problem in our neighborhood, immediate neighborhood. I'll leave it at this. Thank you for watching.
Network 18 decimates Times Internet with over 6 times more unique users on social media. Network 18, the undisputed leader of news networks, way ahead of the times.